Marandi, who is an Iranian analyst and, of course, a university professor at the University of Tehran. Mr. Marandi, can you tell us whether, with more than 24 hours to go, whether Iran is actually willing to back down here, because we're seeing a lot of brinkmanship here, and finally give access to its military sites?
Well, it's not an issue of Iranians having to back down. It's the issue of the United States that has to back down. The Iranians in the past, as we all know, have given access to military sites, sensitive sites that the Americans claimed were a part of some nuclear program. But in reality, on both occasions in the past, when there were inspections, the Americans found absolutely nothing. And the Iranians were saying back then that the Americans, basically through the IAEA, were carrying out intelligence operations to understand Iranian conventional defense capabilities. And in more recent years, when Iran gave information about its scientists to the IAEA, unfortunately that was leaked to Western intelligence agencies and subsequently to Israel, and 5 Iranian scientists were murdered. So the Iranians feel an obligation to protect their citizens as well as their defense capabilities, especially when the US president constantly says all options are on the table, or when the Israeli regime's prime minister too threatens Iran with military strikes. I think it would be very silly for the Iranian negotiating team not to be adamant about protecting its citizens and its installations.
So it feels like there's still some way to go before the two sides can meet in the middle and clinch that final comprehensive agreement. Mr. Marandi, are you hearing anything about a plan B in place?
Well, I think Foreign Minister Zarif was very explicit a couple of weeks ago when he said that we're here for a good deal, and he said that if there is no deal, the world won't come to an end. And I think he was basically pointing out that Iran has red lines, and that those red lines have to do with Iranian sovereignty. And no matter how much pressure the West puts on, or we see in the Western media, the Iranians simply cannot relinquish their sovereignty, their dignity, and their independence. So really the United States is the side that has to make the decisions. I think it's become quite clear that over the last 2 years, Iran has been very flexible. The new administration in Iran has slowed down key elements of the nuclear program in order to create an atmosphere of trust. Yet the Iranians feel that the Americans have so far not reciprocated in a manner in which they should. What the Americans really need to do from the Iranian perspective is to give up clinging to the sanctions regime. If they want a deal, they have to give up the sanctions. They can't have their cake and eat it too.
You're saying the Foreign Minister Zarif said that there's a possibility that if the deal's not strong enough, they'll walk away. The Americans have actually echoed this sentiment. What is the scenario if the negotiations in Vienna collapse?
I doubt that the negotiations will collapse because the Americans really need Iran too much. The Iranians also want a deal, without a doubt, but what's going on in Greece, the problems in Europe, the collapse of this region, largely thanks to the United States and its Western allies allowing the Turkish president, the Saudis, and the Qataris to support extremists and Wahhabi groups which have devastated country after country across the board in this region. This has led to Iran being really the only remaining stable, powerful country that can prevent the spread of ISIL and Al-Qaeda in this region. Also, with the rise of rivals like China and Russia, I think really the United States needs to rethink its policy towards Iran. And the reality is that if Iran had not blocked the path of the extremist groups funded by the Saudis and the Turks, among others, and the Israeli regime, ironically, right now the catastrophe would be much worse than what it is today. So I think the Americans know that ultimately they have to find some sort of common ground with Iran to find a solution.